most people say you got to play every slate, no slates off. How do you feel about that?
No, you definitely don't have to play every slate. Absolutely not. And also you got to understand that I'm also trying to get better also. Like I'm far from being a perfect player by any means. I'm not perfect at all. I don't even consider myself one of the best in the world by any means. So like, hanging out in the community, learning from other players, even learning from players that play at smaller stakes. Like there's always something to learn from somebody. So there's somebody out there that's smarter than you. Don't ever think you're smarter than anybody. There's somebody out there that's smarter than you. There's somebody out there that's better than you, and just be willing to learn.
What's up, everyone? Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo. And on this episode of Behind the Mind, I'm going to talk to my guy Jerry, scarface521 on DraftKings and FanDuel. We talk about balancing both sites, playing at the highest levels. He's had a ton of success with DFS, winning 100K or more over 25 times. I've had the pleasure of meeting him at certain live finals. He's been to a ton of those, and he just breaks it down, everything from his lifestyle. It's a busy one. How he does it, how he keeps things balanced, his process, taking days off, handling downswings, getting to these qualifiers. We go through all that and more. So let's get into it. Let's hop on here with my guy, Jerry, and go behind the mind. All right, got my guy Jerry here with me, Scarface521 on DraftKings. You've probably seen him at the top of leaderboards, but not just DraftKings, FanDuel as well, and we'll get more into that later on. He's one of the true players out there that plays heavy volume, both sites, and is successful on both sites. But my guy Jerry, been fortunate enough to meet you at some of these live finals, hang out with you, your family, cousins. You bring them all, man. It's awesome to see you. Thank you for hopping on with me, man. I appreciate you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. This is exciting. I'm glad to be on this show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Another episode of Behind the Mind. Had a few done already, but getting another one here in the tank for everybody. I think this is going to be a good one. I'm excited to go through it. I do preface every show with letting the guests know junior high basketball. If you remember back to it, the 2-pass rule. You can't just go out and ball hog and take all the shots. If you want to say pass to a question, you get 2 passes. But the other house rule, my friend, is you cannot pass on the first question. And just want to know a little bit about your personal background. Like, are you playing DFS full time? Do you have a job, own businesses? Of course, I know you a little bit, so we'll talk about that. But just in general, what's sort of your background before we get into how you found DFS?
Yeah, for sure. So I live in the LA area. My parents have always been in the liquor business since they came here in the 70s. So me and my brother, this is one thing nobody knows about me. Not too many people know, but I have a twin brother. So me and my brother kind of took over the businesses, started our own liquor, markets, deli, properties, things like that. So we kind of like just took over and grew the business on our own. And that's what we've been doing. Me and him work together.
It's awesome, man. I mean, obviously family business is a fun one. It can be a fun one. I know certain places and certain families, it can be a bit challenging, but
the good thing with my family is we all get along. Me and my brother never fight. We never fought growing up. You'd think like twins living together, all that, like we would fight. We're not like that at all. We completely get along. He's also a DFS player. He watches you all the time. He loves your PGA content.
Oh, I appreciate it. It might be a twins thing though, because you guys are connected, technically. So maybe it's that where you don't fight as much. You probably had to dress the same back in the day and just be, brotherly love goes that way too, especially when you're twins. But I was going to ask, like, just the setup of that, just off the top, kind of an interesting starting point. But what is it like balancing that then? Because I already, obviously in the intro and just talking to even with you here and pre-show and all that, you do play on DraftKings and FanDuel pretty heavily on both sides. And some people have a hard time just even balancing one site. So maybe you can relate it a little bit to that, the work-life balance plus the double site balance.
Yeah, people will trip out when I tell them what my schedule is like every day and how I manage to squeeze in DFS every day. And don't forget, like, I'm on the West Coast too. So I got a 3-hour, everybody's got a 3-hour head start on me also. I usually wake up 4:30 every day. If anybody's ever lived in LA, the traffic here is a motherfucker, dude. So you got to get on the road early, beat the traffic. So I do that. My work's about 35 minutes away from my house with no traffic. So usually at work, get my work done. doing management stuff, everything I got to do for work. And then I usually get out of there about 10 o'clock, something like that, come home. And as you've known from me, I'm a gym rat. So
yeah,
got to get my gym in first. So I'll be home by like 11 o'clock, get a little rest in, get a little meal in, go to the gym, get my workout. Then I come home. Then I got about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours sometimes to, do some research, jump in the contest, see what contest I'm going to play, figure out my process, get my lineups in. And then also I'm a dad. So my kids come home from work, I coach their teams. They got a lot of activities. And by the time lock time comes, which is 4 o'clock my time, that's when that time starts. And that's the rest of the night for me.
Yeah, that's a crazy day in the life. Like you said, obviously not a lot of people would find that stuff out. I think they'll probably be able to relate to that a little bit later on when you could talk more. We'll get into like mindset, goals, reviewing, things like that. You have quite a bit to balance over there, it sounds like. So good starting point there. Let's go to your DFS background and sort of your history, because, everyone has their story. We'll get to that in a second, but just sort of when did you start, or when did you find DFS, I should say, like let's go by year. And then when did you kind of start taking it seriously?
So I started playing fantasy football back in like 97, like back when nobody even knew what the fuck fantasy was. And we used to put our teams together, and there was nothing to keep tracks of stats or anything like that. We would have to wait until Monday morning when the stats came out in the paper, and then we'd like manually figure out our teams and stuff. So I've been playing fantasy football from way back when. I was always into like sports gambling, and I love playing poker. I was playing poker on the sites, Full Tilt, Poker Stars. And that's when I came up with scarface521. People always ask me, how the hell did you come up with that name?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Scarface, we talked about it. One of my favorite movies when I was growing up. So, and I always thought it would be cool to kind of put that Tony Montana logo right there. And I thought maybe it would look intimidating, whatever. I don't know if that helped. And then they asked me, how'd you come up with 521? Is it your birthday? I said, no. It's actually one of my favorite songs ever is a Doors song, 521, 521, baby. So I just threw that on there. It made sense. And yeah, so when Poker Stars and all that shit shut down, I'm an action junkie. So I started looking around for, I started seeing the commercials on TV for FanDuel, DraftKings, all that thing. And yeah, so I just signed up on FanDuel, DraftKings, threw my Scarface521 on there. And then I just kind of, started learning it, was not successful at first at all.
Yeah.
And then it took me a while to figure it out.
What year was that when you first found it? Like before, I'm going to talk about stumbling through it in the beginning, because I think that's hilarious too. I'll tell you more on that in a second. But what year was that? Just quick.
I think I signed up in like 2012, and I didn't really start playing it like seriously or until about 2015 or something like that.
Yeah, I think we're about the same, because you can go on FanDuel, which I also play on both sites, but not haven't found the exact same success as you on both sides, but a little bit here, a little bit there. And I will say, you see the date on FanDuel, and it always dates you a little bit. You're like, oh man, I've been playing it that long. But
remember since 2000, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get into it. That was I was going to ask you, so I'm glad you just brought that up. I said this on a couple other versions of this, doing an episode with some others. Everyone always tells this story, and I don't believe it for anybody really. But it's I deposited $100. I ran it up to 10K, never looked back, never deposited. Like, I don't believe that necessarily. But how did your start go for that sort of situation?
So I started off, I would look for the biggest prizes. Oh, this one's got 100K. Oh, this one's got $1 million. And I jump in those, and I throw, a couple of bullets in those, and I'm like, I wasn't cashing at all. And then I thought, well, how am I going to beat 100,000 people? Okay, let me jump in these higher stakes. I was kind of used to playing higher stakes in like poker or whatever, so it didn't really like bother me to jump up in those stakes. I felt comfortable, but I jumped up there and figured out like it was just as hard. You're playing against all these sharp dudes. I forgot some of these like guys back then, the early guys, the Saho Suds and all these guys. I was playing against those guys, and I was just losing, depositing, losing. Trying to figure it out, trying to figure out which sport I liked. I was always into MLB, NFL. And then, I just started, signing up on some of these content sites and trying to figure out like what they're doing. And I wasn't really using any projections or optimizers, anything like that. I wasn't really familiar with it. I didn't know how to use it. I was just kind of jumping in there and just firing bullets,
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. Wasn't working at all. And then it was my first big break in DFS. I think it was in 2016 or 2017. I forgot. My good friend Tommy G, who I worked with, and we're friends now. But back then, I heard him on a radio, and he's ranting and, you know, doing the Tommy G thing and, oh, this guy, you got to fucking play this guy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, this guy sounds pretty convincing. And he had mentioned that he was in a documentary, and I watched the documentary. I'm like, oh, this guy, he must know what he's talking about. So I signed up for the site that he was on. I started reading his content, and he was just throwing out this guy, throwing out this guy, throwing out this guy. And I'm like, you know what, fuck it. You know, I feel like this is my week. I jumped in one of those like high stakes FanDuel tournaments. It was like 35 people. It was like a 5K entry. And looking back on it now, the players that I had in that lineup, it's like there was no way I should have had those players in that contest and just submitted that for the buy-in it was. But I ended up blowing the field away with like 1% on this and 2% on that. And it was a $50K payout. And that's kind of like my first big break in DFS. And then I kind of just, you know, used that bankroll to kind of, you know, I definitely didn't win that same amount again for like maybe another year, but I kind of used that bankroll to jump into other contests and figure things out. And then maybe like a year or so after that, I started seeing a little bit more success.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you can pull from it, especially, you know, just to your point there. It's not going to happen all the time when you hit it right away. I know many people have said in the past they got their first big hit and then blew it all back because they thought now that they have the big hit, they're trying to like find it again. But it took you all that time to find it the first time. It's not just going to happen again overnight. Often. You can go on a heater. I know you've gone on some yourself, but I like that call out. And I guess kind of the takeaway to me would be the experience that you got with it, like that 50K. You were able to then check it out at this tournament, find out what you like in this tournament, and do your stuff along the way there. Were you playing multiple sports back then, or were you really just focused on one or two sports at that time?
At that time, it was just NFL and MLB. Like those were the two sports I was familiar with. NBA, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of NBA. You know, UFC wasn't big back then. PGA, I don't think it was big back then. I was playing mostly on FanDuel. I don't even think they offered tournaments in those sports at the time. I wasn't playing cash games at all. I was just jumping into those tournaments. I was jumping into the ones with the biggest payouts, and just, you know, I was trying to nail those, you know?
Yeah. And jump ahead to today, like real time present. What all sports do you play now? Just so everybody out there knows, obviously you've had success in a bunch of them, but what does sort of your general schedule look like for DFS as to what sports you're playing? And are you playing one entry, 5 max, 150? Just give them a little bit of a breakdown on what you're doing now.
So, I mean, the NFL and MLB are my two favorite sports for sure. MLB, I'll probably play every main slate. And with those, it just depends on the contest. If I feel like, you know, I want to get, you know, if there's like a monster on FanDuel and it's like it's a 20 max, sometimes I'll max it out. If it's something on DraftKings, same thing. Like, it just depends on the contest, depends on the payout. It just depends how I'm feeling that day. Sometimes I'll max them out. Sometimes I'll throw a couple bullets in there. If there's a super high stake tournament, you know, I'll throw a bullet in there. Sometimes if I make a lineup and I feel like, oh, you know what, I like this one, but I want to do this one too, so I'll throw another bullet in there and throw another lineup in. It just depends on what I'm feeling that day. I
want to ask you about that real quick, because obviously you already, you know, prefaced the whole episode here by saying how busy you are, and you are busy. You have a crazy life, dad life, work life, business life, owner life, all this other stuff. But I will say, I think that obviously has to have a factor. And how you're feeling could sometimes be that. I think that's important. Like, you don't feel the need to jump in and jam 20 in if it's been a long day, or if you didn't get your workout in for whatever reason. Maybe now, I know you probably don't miss them, but I'm saying if you did, certain things would affect you. You're not just jamming in the slate because you have to, or because you feel like you got to gamble. You are looking at it and saying, okay, I got time today and I'm feeling it. Let me do this and let me see what these contests look like.
Yeah, like for NBA, for example, like I like playing NBA, but NBA, like, you got to be, you know, listening to all these, you know, updates, and you gotta be in front of your laptop or on your phone. If there's days where I feel like I don't have time to do that, I just don't even play it. So NBA, maybe I'll play NBA like once or twice a week now. Things like NFL, like, you got all week to prepare for NFL. You know, I'm off on the weekends, so you know, I have no problem playing whatever on Sundays, right? MLB, same thing. Like, if there's I don't play the morning slates. I don't play like those afternoon slates in MLB. Like, it's strictly just main slate. It's whatever I can make time for that day. Sometimes I don't even play on MLB on the weekends. Maybe on Sundays when I'm free, I play it on Sundays a lot. But yeah, just if I have time to play, I'll play. But you know, there's days where I feel like, oh, if I see a tournament I like and I want to play in that tournament, I'll make time for it. You know, I'll make time for me to get my my work in.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that too, because I'm going into the live final segment here in a second, because obviously you and I have met at plenty of live finals, had some good times, and seen a ton of success there for you. Yeah, I will ask you this though, quick. The setup I want to know is if you do have an event like that on the docket, or if, for example, right now we're recording this mid-November, we know the DraftKings Ultimate, the biggest tournament we've seen in forever, is coming up at the end of December. 33 buy-in, 2.5 million up top. I'm not preparing right now for that. Everything you're doing is part of your preparation. It's your work that you're putting in, your process, all this stuff. When you got a live final coming up next weekend, let's say, and you're in it and you've got a seat, or in some cases you have multiple, is there a certain level of preparation you put in advance for that? Is there stuff you're thinking about in advance to be ready for it? Or sort of how do you set up for something like that?
Yeah, so I'm obsessed with winning these live finals. I really want to win one of these. So like if there's like with the MLB one, the DraftKings one that we just had, or the one that we had on FanDuel, I was looking at that slate from like 2 weeks in advance, kind of just thinking about who's gonna try to think about who's gonna be the chalk and what pitcher am I gonna use or whatever, It's because I really want to win one of those things. That's the reason I keep trying to qualify for these live finals. Plus, they're fun as hell. You get to meet people. But I think about it like in advance. I don't know how other players do, but I always think about them in advance. They're always. I
think I might be wrong, but I think the people watching this episode and these shows, for example, are obsessed a little bit. You have to be. Obviously, I am. That's literally what DFS Mastermind is all about: the obsession of trying to get better, trying to master the game. It's really who can you really master it? Like even the people that become the best, there's ups and downs with that. They don't want to keep doing it for 5 years or 6 years, and things like that all get affected. But that's why I asked you, and what is the obsession? Because I got my own thoughts for me personally, but what is this? What is it with live finals that you think makes so many DFS players, so excited about it? They'll jam $100K a year on trying to get into one live final just to get in it because they just want to have that shot, right? What do you think it is about the live finals that drives everybody so much?
I mean, for one, like you're playing against the best players in the world. I mean, it's that's a cool thing to say. Oh, I played against 100 of the best players in the world, and I took down $1 million or $2 million or whatever the grand prize is. I mean, if you're not going to get a tournament like that on a regular basis where you got such a huge payout with only 100 people to beat. Like you're not gonna find tournaments where it's $1 million payout to first place and you only got to beat 100 people. Yeah, it's 100 of the best players in the world, but just that format alone, like I love that format. I feel like that's my favorite kind of format. Plus, the travel to wherever the event is at, whatever destination, bringing my friends along, bringing my cousins along. It's just the fun. The whole experience of it. It's just I'm obsessed with going to these things and trying to win one.
Yeah, I go to them even when I don't qualify. So I've been
to a couple where I wasn't qualified too.
Yeah, it's just a good time. It's around other people that respect, that do the same thing you do, understand the grind that you're going through. And it's no different. Anybody listening to this, even if they're just starting off or they're sort of finding their way and they're at the earlier point that we were at in our career to where we are now, to say like, oh, I want to get better at this game and I want to improve. That's part of it, the obsession. If you can't tell from the passion on both of our voices, I don't know what else you can do. We're excited about it. I want the trophies, right? I want to get it. It's something where we don't have, if you don't play, like I don't play any sports. I don't have any angle in at competition much outside of competing with some buddies and stuff and golf or whatever it might be. But mainly it's going to be in DFS. And it's a chance to go up, like you said, against the best players in the world, get some hardware, get some cash. And people never believe it. But the trophy is like we're playing for that. The money comes with it. And it's amazing. That's
the money's awesome for sure. But
you want to win.
Say, I'm the MLB champ this year. Or I'm the NFL champ this year or something like, and I've come close so many times and it just sucks. Like, third place, fourth place suck.
Yeah. To talk about that for 2 seconds, just what are some of your live final finishes? What are some of your best live final finishes? And then we can transition out of live finals if you want and just talk about some of your best hits all around and what sports they were in, biggest days, all that sort of stuff.
My first live final that I qualified for was in 2020. It was an NBA live final and it just happened to be in LA. So it was perfect. I didn't have to travel and I was like super excited for it. I had one bullet. And then sure enough, fucking COVID comes around and they canceled the whole thing. So like I didn't even get a chance to go play in it. They ended up just giving us payouts for whatever the buy-in was. I forgot what it was. It was like 20K or something like that. But and then after that, I started playing more of the qualifiers and I qualified for the MLB one. I think it was the following year. No, I qualified for an NBA one the following year. Didn't do too good in that one. Then there was an MLB one in 2021 where I finished in fourth. I think it was fourth place. And that was a 500K first place. And then I think there was an NFL one that I attended in Arizona. I finished in like top 20. The fourth place finish in MLB was my best finish. But
in the live finals, right? You got a taste of it.
What's that?
I say you got a taste of it. That was your fourth place.
I got a taste of it.
That's where you're like, I'm right there off the podium. Unfortunately, not even the 1, 2, 3 with the podium finish, but enough to be like, damn, I was right there.
Oh yeah, and I remember being at the one in Arizona. That was the first one that I actually attended. And I remember they were giving the belt out to, I forgot who won. And like they did a whole interview with him, and I was like, man, next year I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be that dude.
Yeah, I like to stand around. I always stick around for the trophy presentation. You want to kind of live in the moment. You want to realize like that could be you someday, right? That's what you're playing for. Yeah. That's what you want to do. So I always try and think like that. That's sort of part of the mindset. Later on, we will talk more about mindset, handling downswings, what to do when you do get a big win, all of that. I do want to rewind back just for 2 seconds. I know you hit the 50K when you first started out. You talked about all that and then went from there in the next year, maybe playing through some of it. But was there any sort of aha moment, or when you first started playing more seriously, like that was like, okay, a validation moment, like I hit a 50K score, I'm excited, I knew I could do this, now what's the future look like? You just talked about that, but was there anything along the way of like an aha moment where you were, oh, okay, I started to figure this out a little bit now, or maybe you first found an optimizer or projections or whatever it might be? What was the big one for you? All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Behind the Mind. As always, if you want the rest of this episode, you can head over to dfsmastermind.com, get into the community, check it out. You get this, all the other interviews, the strategy, process, application videos that myself and other guests record. You get our Q&A roundtable sessions, the case studies where we deep dive on other DFS player pools and strategies and things that we can pull from that, events for different sports coming up that we have like PGA, NFL, where we do roundtables with that and help you learn about a new DFS sport. We'll have other events as well. And of course, the community is all built around community-created content, DFS on demand, so to speak. So if you need anything, you can hit me up inside the community or on X at ToeTagginTambo. Thanks for watching.